Hello, welcome to American Baker in Germany. I'm Michelle, and today we are continuing our Baking Basics series with learning how to frost a cake. To get the frosting nice and smooth, like it looks like in the pictures, magazines and stuff. The more you practice this, the better you'll get at it. But it is possible to do, and I will show you how I do it. There are a couple different techniques, but this is the way I do it. So let's get started.
I always start out securing the first cake to the bottom of my surface with a dollop of buttercream. This will keep it from moving around the turntable while you're working. I place my first layer of cake down and adjust it to be in the middle. Then I fill my cake with frosting. But you can use a lot of different things here. Let your creativity take off. I've used jam or added nuts or chocolate chips to my buttercream. Just make sure it's something you can spread. If it's very soft, use a dam of buttercream to keep it all inside. The easiest filling is the same buttercream you're using to frost the cake. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat here, so don't stress about it. Just make sure there's enough filling to cover the whole surface. Then I add my second layer of cake. Continue this process if you have more layers. I put the cake on a non-slip mat to keep it from moving around too much. You may notice at this point that my cake is not exactly straight. Don't worry, you can correct a lot of crooked problems with the frosting. I usually start out with a mound of buttercream on the top of the cake and spread it around just a bit. I'm not trying to straighten it at this point. Then I use my spatula to put frosting on the sides. Right now I'm just trying to make sure everything is covered with frosting. Also, please note that I'm using an offset spatula with a straight surface that is offset from the handle by about an inch. This is the easiest tool to use to frost a cake. This way you don't scrape your hand through the buttercream as you're frosting it. Now that I have frosting on all surfaces, I add a bit here and there to help the cake be even. I run my spatula around the outside edge to scrape off any excess and smooth the surface of the cake. I'm not trying to do a perfect icing job at this point because this is just the crumb coat. The final coat is much more important. When I'm happy with the crumb coat, I put it in the fridge to chill for half an hour to allow the buttercream to set up. You can tell your buttercream is set up when you touch the surface and no buttercream comes off on your fingers. This particular cake is a buttercream covered cake. So I need to do my best to cover the cake with buttercream so you can't see the cake through the buttercream anymore. I prefer to start on the top of the cake, but even then this won't be my final frosting on the top either. Then I add a good amount of buttercream to the sides. I'm just trying to add enough buttercream so no cake is visible through the frosting. Before I start smoothing, I check that there's enough buttercream everywhere. Watch the bottom line of the side that there's no gaps and the top edge, as those are the spots that tend to give people the most trouble. Add a bit extra if you need to. Now we're ready to smooth the frosting. At this point you won't be adding much frosting to it. You're mostly scraping frosting away. So begin by wiping the spatula clean of excess buttercream. Then holding your spatula straight up and down, scrape along the cake carefully, using the turntable to move the cake. I've seen people do this in one go, but I've never been able to. I prefer to just go over it and over it and over it until I'm happy with how smooth it is. I noticed that there's a bit too much buttercream around the bottom since the spatula doesn't have square corners, so I lay it flat along the cake to smooth that bottom lip of buttercream. As you go around perfecting the smoothness, you use less and less pressure on your spatula. By the end, you're only using the lightest of pressure. Smoothing the cake this way often causes a lip of buttercream to form along the top of the cake. You smooth this out by scraping it towards the center. As I did this, I noticed that there were a few gaps in the buttercream along the top of the cake. I decided to use a bit extra buttercream to fill in the gaps. I smoothed the top with multiple strokes, spinning the cake on the turntable. Now I have to smooth the sides again. I lightly scrape my spatula around the cake to smooth it, once again using progressively less pressure and scraping my spatula off whenever there was too much buttercream on it. I smooth the sides. Then I pull the top lip of frosting into the middle of the top of the cake. I keep going over it with a very light pressure until I'm happy with the frosting. As a final step, I clean the excess buttercream off my cake board because that doesn't look too nice. I usually use a damp rag. Just be careful not to touch your buttercream and mess up your beautiful frosting job at this point. And that's how I frost a cake to make it nice and smooth. I hope this helps you frost your cakes to your own standard. See you again next time!